Hello and welcome to the first video in week 3 of ADMS 1010 Exploring the Functions of Business. In week 3 we will be looking at organizations, and in this video we will provide a quick primer on organizations and organization theory. First, we will look at some definitions of the word organization and then some of their primary characteristics. Following that, we will consider 3 different types of organizations, and then finally we will quickly look at some of the major topics in organization theory. To begin, let's look at some definitions of the word organization. First, let's look at Merriam-Webster's. As you can see, this definition has 2 main components. The first considers the word both as a verb, that is, to organize something, and also as the state or condition of being organized. This component appears to speak more to an organization as an action or a characteristic of an individual. The second component, on the other hand, defines organization as a noun, that is, as an organization or an association, but also in relationship to an administrative structure or the personnel of that structure. It is the objects of the second component of this definition that organization theory speaks to most directly, though perhaps some, if not many, of the insights provided by organization theory could be applicable in an individual sense as well. We can also consider how individuals within an organization contribute to its being organized. Now consider this second definition from Wikipedia. Here we find 2 additional interesting elements underlined here for emphasis. According to this definition, we can see that organizations of the second kind, from the preceding definition, are defined by possessing a collective goal. That is, the individuals or personnel comprising the organization help to define the organization or association by agreeing to work toward a common goal. Second, in working toward a common goal, the personnel of an organization help to set that organization apart from its external environment. Or, in other words, all the other associations, organizations, and individuals operating outside of it. Interestingly, the Wikipedia definition notes that the organization is separate from its environment, but also linked to it as well. This suggests that an organization, in order for it to function most effectively, must not lose sight of its connections with the society in which it operates. Based on these definitions, we can summarize a few primary characteristics of organizations. Organizations are social entities, meaning that they are made up of people. Organizations are goal-directed, meaning that they are defined at least in part by their personnel being in pursuit of a common goal. And lastly, organizations are linked to their environment. Indeed, we can consider organizations to be open systems, though we will leave that discussion to later in the course. Now let's look at some different kinds or types of organizations. As we go through these, try to consider what sets them apart in terms of the 3 primary characteristics of organizations we just looked at. First, we have private sector organizations, or in a word, businesses. Here we have all the organizations owned and operating privately, that is, not by the government, to provide all the various goods and services that we enjoy. As a thought exercise, ask yourself what collective goal you think defines organizations operating in the private sector. Remember, though, that a collective goal works to define an organization in particular, and is not necessarily shared universally by all organizations operating in that sector. Next, we have organizations operating in the private sector. Being part of the private sector implies that the organization in question is owned by, perhaps represents might be a better word here, everybody in the society in which it operates. These are the organizations that provide many of the services society needs to function, and that may not be capably or effectively provided by private organizations operating in a free market. For example, here we find governments and their subdepartments, as well as the associated public organizations providing services such as public education and infrastructure. Personnel of these organizations are often considered public servants. And finally, we have organizations operating in the nonprofit sector, or civil society. These organizations are private in the sense that they are not owned or operated by the public, though they may or may not claim to represent the public interest, but they provide goods or services of a different nature than do organizations of the private sector. Organizations operating within civil society include those of varying levels of organization, from the highly organized, like industry associations or professional associations, to those less so, like neighborhood associations or parent-teacher associations and so forth. Next, organization theory. Organization theory does not provide a single overarching theory to describe how organizations function. Instead, the term refers to the study of formal social organizations, such as businesses and bureaucracies, and their interrelationship with the environment in which they operate. You will learn a good deal more about organization theory as you continue in the School of Administrative Studies here at York. For the time being, however, we will just note a couple issues in the field. First, as we are considering this week, one important question organization theory seeks to address concerns the size of an organization. What size of organization works most effectively, and in what situations? Also, organization theory considers the relationship between the organization and its environment. What is the nature of this connection, and what responsibilities does an organization have to its environment? Last, organization theory also looks at the structure of organizations and seeks to identify practices and processes in organizing organizations that contribute to their overall effectiveness. That's it for this first video on week 3. Next up, we will look at contrasting views on big and small organizations.